3, 2, 1, and thank you for joining me, and thank you for being here. I am Kasey, and we are here to talk about the stories we got into last week, whether it's books or TVs, but, it's mostly gonna be movies, I'm not gonna lie. There are probably going to be some critiques in there, but this is supposed to be a place to talk about the things we enjoy without being a dick. I hope everything comes off as fair and earnest. At the end of the day, I am merely reflecting on all the work that the creators put into the projects that we're talking about here. I don't want to take away from that in any way, shape, or form. At the end of the day, this is a show about spreading love for the things we love. And I'm also supposed to give a heads up about the bigger things we have coming this month, like a whole video on what Dragon Ball means to us and our little marathon on Dragon Ball. But that is all I have in the ways of updates and introducing things. So here be the 4th week of August, 2024. 2024 is A Quiet Place Day 1. Now listen, the one character I needed to survive this movie definitely did, so... We have seen the aftermath of a world that has been deconstructed by monster aliens with super hearing, but now it's time to watch the wreckage from the beginning as we follow a survivor's quest for the last lukewarm slice of pizza in New York City, with a really good bloke who earnestly just wants to help and the most chill cat I have ever seen. Day 1 is a well-executed and acted alien invasion story. It focuses on well-written, everyday characters over saviors of the world who deliver a straightforward and fast-paced sci-fi horror picture in a way that I very much appreciated. Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 1994. 30 years ago. God damn. Oh, that hurts. Instead of finding a fun, in-universe way to bring back Freddy Krueger from the dead, this time we are opting to play around with the fourth wall and set things in reality, where the concept of Freddy Krueger becomes tangible in the minds of the original creator and actors, all playing fictionalized versions of themselves. Instead of taking these meta-story elements and using them for parody like in Jason 6, New Nightmare plays with the idea of a demon killing you and your loved ones through your dreams as straight-faced as possible while still letting the killer's cruel personality shine. The homage to the series' first kill has always been a standout for me in the movie here, and I've always appreciated this installment's mix of a serious tone with a meta-narrative. Generally, the more meta you get, the less serious the production becomes. Even Wes Craven would play around with meta again in the Scream franchise, lightening the atmosphere significantly. It makes for a unique movie experience and a really well-done Nightmare on Elm Street, honestly, for me. Les Miserables, the 2024 Broadway show. So I was gifted a pair of tickets to see the 2024 stage adaptation of Les Mis at Boston Citizens Opera House by a very close partner who wasn't able to join me, so first I need to thank Care for the amazing tickets to my favorite stage musical. If you are unfamiliar, Les Miserables is an extremely loose adaptation of Victor Hugo's gigantic novel of the same name. The novel bounces around between a few characters, but the stage show and most adaptations honestly follow Jean Valjean, the wanted thief and convict who takes a crazy heel turn after some random acts of kindness. It's about Jean Valjean's quest for redemption and his saving a young girl from an abusive home while evading the ruthless police inspector Javert. Oh, there's also a whole little revolution going on in the background because France. The production hasn't appeared to have really changed since I first had a chance to see it in 2010. It combines 2 or 3 utilitarian sets with rear projection and a handful of hyperbolic and well-designed props. If you have not seen Les Mis, I cannot recommend the stage show enough. The sets and what the whole crew does with the space make it a really brilliant set just to watch. If you are familiar with the stage show, then this is certainly Les Mis. The cast is led by Nick Cartel and Preston Truman Boyd, but Jake David Smith's interpretation of Marius Pontmercy was a specific standout to me. His delivery and timing added a touch of humor to the character when it was appropriate, and it definitely resonated with the audience. Les Miserables is a very deep and personal story for me on an individual level about being the person to draw the line in the sand for yourself and taking ownership for your decisions and for your life. It's about revolution and rising up to take a stand. Again, France, and not always being able to get back up. It balances hope and tragedy in a really unique way that only Les Miserables can. 2011's Thor. Ah yes, the MCU movie directed by Hercule Poirot himself. After being banished from his utopian planet for wanting to start a war, Thor finds himself in a small contemporary town with his hammer somewhere in the distance being particularly stubborn, putzing around with a handful of underutilized actors until Loki schemes himself into oblivion back on Asgard. Thor is unique in its action, and its stakes are completely separated from one another. Thor is essentially saving his entire people, but it feels like he's just protecting a small town millions of light years away and learning about responsibility. It makes for an odd juxtaposition that it feels like a lot of audiences did not appreciate. This does continue to be an excellent introduction to the character, portrayed by a great cast. While the action may be a little forward-heavy in the runtime, it has strong themes that permeate through the picture that have always kind of hit for me, and I like Thor a lot. First MCU movie I saw opening day, by the way. Crystal Lake Memories, the complete history of Friday the 13th from 2013. Now, I know you all wanted a nearly 7-hour Friday the 13th documentary. Well, here it is. Hosted and narrated by the original Tommy Jarvis, Corey Feldman, next to a campfire with interviews from every person involved in the series that responded to the creators' emails, I'm sure. It's clear that the makers of this documentary love the franchise and want to honor Jason Voorhees and the legacy of the feature films that so many people are fans of. This is definitely a piece meant to be experienced in portions. I watched every chapter of the documentary as I watched the movies as supplemental material. I'm pretty sure that's how it was originally released at some point, making for a seamless and engaging way to enjoy this documentary in bite-sized chunks. 1983's The Final Terror. I don't know how we can get more straightforward than a group of friends going to hang out in the woods only to get stalked by a killer in a ghillie suit. The Final Terror stands out for its very real and flawed characters that are smart enough to stick together but dumb enough to constantly smoke and take shrooms throughout the movie. It's these characters, along with the great atmosphere, that keep the movie so engaging and so tense throughout for me. The Child Thief from 2009. Written by Brom and narrated by Kirby Hayborn. This is a contemporary take on the Peter Pan story by the author and the artist Brom. If you're unfamiliar with Brom's work, he has a history of mashing together different mythologies and lore from different cultures with fairy tales and children's stories, and making everything as gothic and twisted as he can without losing the core of the characters and the story. The best way I could describe The Child Thief is, you know, all those clickbait articles you read about the 10 classic fairy tales that are darker than you remember? Yeah, this is that made manifest without any subtext, with all the fantasy elements pulled from folklore in a way that is both familiar and entirely unique. Now, the story is from the point of view of a would-be lost boy running from an abusive home life in 2005 New York City, only to be saved by Peter and taken to the land where you never age. Avalon. Our protagonist pretty much immediately understands that Peter has been rescuing children from abusive homes to train them as his own little magic child army against an army of elves that Peter pissed off ages ago. Witches of all shapes and sizes, and a crew of men deformed by the magic of the island. The Child Thief is all about being confronted with trauma and either overcoming it or letting it overcome you. The book splits its time by showing the backstory of Peter Pan and many of his early adventures in a very cruel world that does not care to hurt children. If you do need a trigger warning, then here it is, because Peter, as well as every one of the lost children in this story, experience explicit trauma of just about every kind. Stephen King levels of trauma or worse. I don't believe Brom brought up any of these topics in a way that ended up feeling exploitative. It feels like the author going out of his way to be as tactful as he can without skirting over the awful things that happen in reality and should not be omitted or ignored. Brom's melding of folklore is interesting and quickly removes just about every problematic element you think of when you envision Peter Pan. Native American characters still play a huge role in the story, but aren't what made the Red Man red. We also shift the Captain Hook character and his crew to something that's new, more sympathetic, and far more terrifying to me on a personal level at the same time. I listened to this on the Libby app, but I also have a physical copy. Now, the version I listened to was narrated by Kirby Hayborn, and while it took me a few chapters to get into his specific tone and cadence, he definitely drew me into the story. I think his New York accent is a little big and stands out next to his normal narrating voice, but Hayborn is still an excellent and very clear storyteller. Brom also has a new book out for pre-order now called Evil in Me that I am exceptionally pumped for, so a quick plug for something I'm getting nothing back on. Freddy vs. Jason from 2003. Took us 15 years of production hell to get to the cathartic bliss that is Freddy vs. Jason. Watching Freddy scheme from the afterlife and somehow send Jason to Elm Street to remind the Midwest what nightmares are truly about. Terrorizing stereotypes until Freddy has enough power to deliver on the title twice over. It feels like this movie has always disappointed fans of Freddy Krueger. The character has only one on-screen kill, and in a lot of ways loses the final fight of the movie. But I've always felt that Krueger was the driving force of the movie, and his presence is felt throughout. Most of the movie taking place in a suburb has always made it feel more like a Freddy movie to me, in spite of the killer not being particularly effective. As a Jason movie, the character really shines. We rarely get sequences of the character marching through large groups getting a true massacre. The movie still has always felt like a Freddy Krueger movie to me, in which Jason is the real hero. We just follow the final girl instead. Kurtzinger also brings a unique presence to Jason that is a little more sad than the previous incarnations that has always worked for me. Jason being afraid of water, though, has always been dumb in context of the larger franchise. I appreciate everything this movie does right. Could have easily gone very meta, as was the trend at the time, but instead of leaning more Bride of Chucky, director Ronnie Yu opted to make this feel more like a classic slasher with all the shine of the early 2000s. The writing of the story doesn't always make sense, but the movie is largely fun, creative, and fast-paced. People always seem to nitpick Kia's nose-picking scene for not carrying over into the real world from the dream. This has never been a complaint that made much sense to me. If Freddy's attacks left real-world marks in every instance, then Philip would have left bloody trails down the halls in Nightmare 3. 2024's Jackpot! In the not-too-distant future, California has opted to assist their economic crisis by holding a simple lottery, except any one person who kills the winner before sundown is awarded their winnings. Only rules are no guns or arrows. The winner this time around just so happens to be a new arrival to the city who hasn't kept up on the news, so we get antics until a professional bodyguard shows up to be a good dude and deliver an action movie. Jackpot is lighthearted despite its R rating, intentionally leaning into the action movies of decades past with wire stunts and very exaggerated performances that never feel out of place in the hyper-reality that this story calls home. I appreciate it doesn't take itself so seriously while the characters and world aren't spending time winking at the camera. Just Awkwafina surviving a very dumb premise in downtown LA. Doctor Who, The Smugglers from 1966. Oh, a historical whose gimmick isn't bouncing between historical figures? What are we gonna do with our standard get captured and bounced around plot? Same jam? Oh. Okay. At least Ben and Polly bring a new dynamic to this riff, as everyone gets framed for murder while hanging around with pirates. Ben and Polly do bring a new energy with how quick the pair are on their feet, talking and tricking people out to do them harm throughout the 4 episodes. Even if much of the runtime is spent in long conversations reminiscent of other historical serials, they are also pretty engaging, with a 4th part that is really crammed full of fight sequences and character deaths. So I have also seen the reconstructions but for this watch, I found Who Recon's Fanimations on Dailymotion. I cannot thank them enough for all the time and energy they put into making these adaptations of missing episodes that even the BBC had deemed too unprofitable to touch. I will always wish we had the original productions as it was released, but I would much rather have what Who Recon produced than nothing at all. This is a great showcase for the different dynamics that new companions can bring more than anything else. It has a similar vibe to other historical episodes without the excitement of name drops every episode, and should have a not poorly done for early Doctor Who fight. 1967's Les Samourai. I don't know if the French understand what a samurai is. Were samurai traditionally used as hitmen? Because that is what the title character be in this movie. Other than nitpicking the title, this is a masterfully crafted noir in which we follow a samurai-like hitman, as well as the police and their very flawed investigation methods. The movie is intentionally slow, but builds tension consistently with a smart story and great character writing. 1966's The Magic Serpent. I came for the giant monsters on the poster, but came for the insane mystical Chambara adventure, dear God. A very, very loose adaptation of the tale of the Galleon Jiraiya, following a banished prince who trains at the ancient art of toad magic, and his quest to regain his kingdom from a dude with snake and dragon powers. Bookended by 2 really fun tokusatsu sequences. The Magic Serpent is always moving and throwing new shit at the screen in a way that I found very engaging. It's big, dumb fun with a few names that fans of Japanese folklore will definitely recognize. And, all the Naruto people out there. Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street from 2019. This documentary hyper-focuses on the behind-the-scenes filmmaking and the inspiration behind Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Yes! but it is way more about the lead, Mark Patton, and his struggles as a queer actor in Hollywood at the time, how the movie essentially outed him, as well as how the whole experience pushed him into solitude and out of the entertainment business as a whole. This documentary is deeply personal and highlights not only Mark's real-world struggles, but the entire cast and their support of the lead actor. Scream Queen is a documentary with a deeply raw story that is professionally put together and has a really strong emotional conclusion. Prospect from 2018. You mean extremely low-budget sci-fi that focuses on the human experience and survival over grand space epics? These are the stories I live for. Our lead for The Prospect is a prospector and soon-to-be space orphan who was forced to make deals and friends with the one person she'd rather not, all in the aims of getting off the planet they're stuck on and hopefully make a little money in the process. The two leads take a solid script and work it to the absolute best of their abilities in a well-thought-out and crafted production that makes the best of like 3 sets, 5 spacesuits in the woods. 2024's Hellhole. Don't you just hate it when your little Serbian digging exposition ends up uncovering a Lovecraftian nightmare? Hellhole wants to have all the drama of The Thing, but make it a lot more fun with a quick and witty script. It didn't quite work for me, and I feel like I also maybe missed some of the story's deeper themes, but the actors I thought did really well for the material they had, and there are some bloody fun sequences. 2024's The Crow. Now, do I think this is the worst movie ever put to film or like an insult to the first adaptation? No, I absolutely do not think so. Do I also think we needed to mix the Crow story of grief with addiction themes? Also no. I do think this Crow tries to be earnest, but is equally bogged down by decades of producers wanting to do their own thing. From sets just for exposition, to making sure we need to see the meet cute that the romance hinges on, whether it makes sense or not. There is a lot I enjoyed though. Bill Skarsgård is consistently great in the lead role, and the final action sequence is really well done, and I thought, like, unintentionally hilarious. Chris Grace is Scarlett Johansson from 2024. I keep forgetting whether it was Scarlett Johansson as Chris Grace as Scarlett Johansson, or Chris Grace as Scarlett Johansson as Chris Grace. The comedy special starring either Scarlett Johansson or Chris Grace, if that is your real name, is raw and it's real, and I think it's very important to watch. It feels like it's about not being seen or washed out and erased. We acknowledge we don't have definitive answers or solutions to all of our problems, but it is still in people's hands to make the creative decisions that don't insult, patronize, or completely ignore entire demographics. The special also swerves like crazy in ways that I found really engaging and fun in only ways that Dropout can do. I think it's a really outstanding production you should watch. Doctor Who, the 10th Planet from 1966. Here we are, the point that would change Doctor Who forever, the renewal of the first Doctor into the second. You'd think maybe we'd landed on the titular 10th planet, but no. Just in a snowy military base on Earth, as our long-lost twin planet Mondas is spinning close enough for a full-scale invasion of Cybermen in their first appearance. This is a great episode for the Doctor and Ben specifically, between the Doctor having a solid moral high ground to stand on and Ben having a lot to do plot-wise. The pair make for a great combo we only see here. It feels like Polly, though, is a little more regulated to just being the episode secretary, and I don't love that. The Cybermen do steal the show, though. There has always been something off-putting and uncanny valley about the expressionless and foil-ridden Mondasian Cybermen. They are used to great effect here, and it is especially thematic that the cold and emotionless Cybermen make their debut in a barren, snowy wasteland. The only thing I do wish for is that the serial gave a little more setup and pathos to the Doctor's exit. And it's not my first watch, but the ending always hits me over the head out of nowhere like a bat enhanced by the hand of Omega. And that's everything we watched last week. Thank you for sticking with me throughout the whole video. Hope everyone got to watch special and fun in their own right last week, and I'd love to know what you watched. What did you watch last week? One more time, we got a Dragon Ball video coming up next week, but that's all I have to talk about. Please just go out and keep being good people.